The King's Gambit arises from the first moves pawn e4, pawn e5, and then you go forward with the move pawn to f4. And indeed, it's a bit risky opening because you're potentially exposing your king in this way, but hey, if you know what you're doing, it's much riskier for your opponent. And actually in this video we're gonna be exploring games of up to master and grandmaster level players where black players were 2500 rated, 2700 rating, and yet they lost in a very bad way. So in the first example we already have black player rated 2500, and let's see what's gonna happen here. After pawn takes f4, white plays knight to f3 to cover this square so that black can't deliver this check anymore, and black goes in the most principled way, pawn g5. This move kind of says, hey, you're never gonna get your pawn back, and secondly, black is ready to push here pawn g4, drive this knight away, and after that still deliver this nasty check queen to h4. And for that reason, actually, a lot of players even stopped playing this King's Gambit at all. But there are ways for white how to play this effectively, and I'm gonna share it with you. The first line is actually my favorite. White just plays knight c3, and it sets an evil trap, even though that certainly doesn't look like a trap, it just looks like a normal development move. And black says, hey, okay, I'm gonna play pawn g4, attack this knight, and as the knight goes away, black can happily play queen h4 here, bringing the queen out, checking the king, and it looks like white is in big trouble. Definitely white does not want to move the king forward, that'll just expose it, and the king is stuck here, other pieces can get out, so king e2 would be bad, and pawn g3 looks bad, equally bad, because after pawn takes g3, white can't recapture because this rook will be lost, in case white recaptures. And if not, black is gonna still deliver this check on the next move. Looks just like white is about to resign. But here comes queen takes g4. You counterattack the queen. And so if black trades queens, well, you end up with an endgame where you're ahead in development, everything's fine if just black trades queen here on g4. But black has something which seems a lot more powerful, like pawn g2, and along the way win this rook on h1. And in this variation, it seems like black outsmarted white, ended up with an extra rook and a winning position. And it's all good with one big but. Here after queen h5, there is no sufficient defense to this. Since previous moves of black are so natural and seems so powerful, you're highly likely to trap even high-rated opponents that way. What can black do now to stop this queen from coming to f7? Knight h6 does not really change things too much, because after d4 you're ready to take this knight, and after that you're still gonna play queen takes f7 with the support of your other knight from e5. Therefore knight h6 does not really work. In this game black played somewhat a smarter move, and again black is a strong player. Black played bishop to e7, preparing this escape square for the king, and actually if you just take here, the king escapes and there is no continuation of white's attack. Actually black is gonna win thanks to their extra rook. So queen takes f7 doesn't work, but instead knight takes f7 actually still wins. Here black responded knight f6, hoping to drive away this queen and then capture the knight and just win. But here comes knight d6, discover check and a double check. Therefore the king definitely has to move. Can't go here because of queen f7 checkmate. Therefore in the game black played king d8, maybe hoping for the perpetual check after knight takes f7, but all of a sudden queen came here to e8, and it's a great life story. The queen was sacrificed herself for the sake of her king, and after knight f7, white is winning. It's absolutely brutal variation, and again, it can work even against advanced level opponents. And guys, I know some of you will ask in comments, Igor, it's all good, but how should black respond correctly? Well, this video is about white's brutal attacks, but if you want to know how to respond as black, exploration is also a lot of fun. Still here, black goes for the main line, pawn takes, after knight goes to f3, black goes pawn g5, and white goes bishop c4. It's actually an old line, it's been played by famous masters of the past such as Morphy, but it's still a deadly opening weapon. And here what I really love about this is how white stays cool no matter what black does. So here after black goes pawn g4, attacking this knight, white says, okay, you want the knight? Okay, no problem, you may take it. White just castles, giving up the knight. Black takes the knight, and again, white keeps playing as if nothing happens, just knight c3, just developing the knight, saying, hey, okay, you want to destroy my casting? Go for it. And again, most played move by black is here pawn takes g2, because it looks super good for black, why not? And after this, guess what? It's actually a losing mistake. But again, very difficult for black to see it, because here instead of recapturing or even rook to f4, you've got something else in mind. You're gonna play a bishop takes f7. The thing is, up to this point you're already way ahead in development, and black is completely underdeveloped. And for that reason, you can just rush into the attack and checkmate black before they've got a chance to figure out what's going on here. So bishop takes, calling the king out. Now after that, rook takes f4. Now we don't just recapture the pawn, but we're also combining it with a deadly attack. And for the king, what can black do? If the king goes somewhere here, you can always bring your queen out, and it's gonna be checkmate on the next move, actually like this. It's a linear checkmate, pretty nice. So the king can't easily escape. Let's come back here, and definitely it's more natural to play knight f6, but it doesn't help either because of pawn e5, and because of this pin the knight can't go, you're gonna capture it anyway, and black is lost. Black played bishop e7, and instead of taking the knight right away, white played an even stronger option, queen h5 check. White uses the pin, so the knight can't move, and because of this check, the king has to go. King went back to f8, now white captures here on f6, and capturing back is deadly for black. White can probably go something like knight d5 and just win the bishop if black does that. Black played bishop d6, hoping to at least gain a tempo for this attack, but that didn't really help. Queen h6 check, white just simply goes for the checkmate. King to e8, and now after a pawn f7, king to e7, and there is nice checkmate by the knight to d5. Again, it's really cool how white was completely non-reactive. Like, whatever black does, white says, okay, you want the knight, take it. You want, destroy my castle, and do it. I have no problem with that. And then all of a sudden, your opponents will opt to play the King's Gambit declined. If they don't feel comfortable going into the main lines because they're sharp and complicated, black may simply defend their pawn by playing something like pawn d6 or knight to c6. In fact, knight to c6 is the second most played move by black in this position. And then you just play knight f3, renewing your threat to this pawn. Black defends it, and then you play bishop c4. And this game we're analyzing was played by a black player with a rating of 2400, and you can just see how bad it went out for black. After knight f6, pawn d3, lots of your opponents, majority of them, will play bishop g4. Looks advantageous for black at first, but in fact it actually backfires. Let's see how. You just castle, black plays here bishop e7, knight c3, so far all the standard moves. And by the way, this bishop is never a problem for you because you can always just play h3, forcing the exchange, which is favorable for you. And black will just go knight d4, very often they will. And there it is to somehow take advantage of this pin, and to start attacking you. But it backfires, because after pawn takes e5 and pawn recaptures, you've got a very beautiful combo. Starting with bishop takes f7. It's not even a sacrifice, because after king takes, you've got knight takes e5, check to the king, and it's a fork to the bishop. And for that reason, when king goes away, it's knight takes g4, and you manage to win this pawn on f7 and completely expose black's king. And guess what black usually does here? It's knight takes g4, because black hopes to gain a pawn back after knight takes c2. And black indeed gained their pawn back, but now it fails to queen e6, checkmate in 1. And the next trap, number 4, is one of the most beautiful traps I've ever seen in my life, and it's crazy because it's been played by a guy in a blindfold simul. That is absolutely astonishing. Okay, coming back to the game, it's been played by Zuckertort, who was one of the strongest players in the world at the time, against an unknown opponent. Black refused to accept the gambit, went for the declined King's Gambit, and once again we're seeing the variation from the previous game we analyzed. Here black still played bishop g4, pawn d3, bishop e7, white castled, and as we already know, knight to d4, a popular move of black, turns out to be a bad mistake. In this game, however, black played knight to h5, which is another attempt of black to somewhat put pressure on white. In this case, black attacks this pawn on f4, but white refuted it in a really brutal way. Pawn takes e5, here knight takes. Again, at first looks like black is somewhat attacking here all around, and after bishop takes d1, there's bishop takes f7 check. And even though there is some similarity to the legal's checkmate, but here it's a much more advanced combination, because definitely it's not that easy to foresee all the consequences. I mean, the first move of course is clear, king goes to f8, but now there is no immediate checkmate, and white still needs to find a way to continue his attack, because hey, he's a queen down. So bishop takes h5, which is a discover check to the king. Black played bishop f6, alright, and all of a sudden, even though it temporarily looks like black is just doing perfectly fine, white sacrificed the rook here on f6, destroying black's defense. Now what's the trick? If black plays the most common move, like the most natural move, queen takes f6, it fails to knight to d7, fork to the king and queen. And after king e7, which is also nice, knight takes f6 not only gets the queen back, but also defends this bishop on h5. And therefore, if black captures here, white recaptures, and white ends up with a huge and winning material advantage. And for that reason, in the actual game, black captured here by the pawn. But now here comes bishop h6 check to the king. Where can it go? Going here doesn't work because of bishop f7, simple checkmate. Here is the winning line number 5. Black player is rated 2700 rating. So again, these traps work even against really well prepared opponents. Black plays pawn g5, going for the main line. White still plays bishop c4. I think you already remember this line we analyzed where white is ready to sacrifice the knight for quick development. So we're ready to give up this knight. And in this case, white played a more solid move. Queen takes f3. Well, that's relatively solid for this crazy line. Now, white indeed gave up the knight, but of course you can see that white's heavy pieces are lining up along the f-file, ready to potentially, deliver some checkmate there. And for that reason, lots of your opponents will play here bishop h6, trying to hold on to this pawn and even more importantly, just close this file for white's pieces. Now you play pawn d4, you occupy the center, and you get ready for taking this pawn by your bishop. And now, black will, well, there are of course different ways black can play, but knight c6 is very common and natural, developing a knight, threatening knight to d4. And here, once again, I really love this trap, because it doesn't look like trap, but it actually is. White plays knight c3, and it looks like white just develops, mimicking black's move. Black played knight c6, white played knight c3. So what can be more natural? But it's a really evil move. Now after knight takes d4, accepting this pawn sacrifice, threatening the queen, looks super good for black. It fails due to the shocking move in this particular position, and probably shocking for your opponent. Generally, it's very common tactics and common attacking pattern in the King's Gambit, because you've got an open f-file and you want to destroy black's king's pawn shield and call it out so that after that you can attack it along the f-file. And right now, the queen is still in danger, so white played queen h5, check to the king, and white is just waiting here. Again, this exposed king cannot be defended. Wherever it goes, you just play bishop f4, and within a couple of moves you're gonna checkmate black along the f-file, and there is nothing black can do against that. So in the game, black took here on f4, white recaptured, still renewing the threat of rook to f7. Black played knight f6, trying to defend, but then queen g5 check. The king played here to f7, and now simple move rook to f1, and basically black can already resign right here, because after rook takes f7, there will be a checkmate within a couple moves.